Voice. Hi, welcome to this session on portfolio prep and presentation. Today we have alums Martina Alexander, Megan Mulholland, and J. Brett Grill. And what we're going to start out with today is for each of our panelists to just tell us a little bit about who they are and what they do. So, Brett, let's actually start with you. You're going to have to unmute yourself and tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay? I got the mask on. I'm in an airport right now.
You sound great.
Great. So my name is Brett Grill. I graduated from the School of Art and Design in '01. I worked as a professor for about 10 years at the University of Missouri, taught painting and ran the graduate program for a while. In 2016, I moved on from there and started working in sculpture exclusively. I've been making statues and monuments for about the past 10 years. I did that to some extent while I was at the university. But I've been doing that exclusively for, again, maybe 5 or 6 years now. I have 2 employees. We work kind of all over the country, building bronze statues and monuments.
Very cool. Thank you, Brett. Let's jump over to Martina.
Hi, everybody. I'm Martina Alexander. I'm a U of M alum from 2012. I'm an artist, graphic designer, and illustrator based out of Detroit. I've been freelance for the last 3 years, but I started out working as an in-house designer at Whirlpool Corporation, doing digital interfaces and UX, as well as Shinola Detroit, where I did kind of everything: web design, branding, everything for digital, some illustrations, and then eventually decide to go on my own. And so now I do mostly branding projects, web design, illustration, and then I'm also an artist. So I'm a painter. I have exhibitions. I have a solo exhibition this year. And that's kind of like, I can feel everything shifting a little bit in that direction. But yeah, that's me.
Great, thank you so much. And then Megan, hi. Tell us a bit about you and what you do.
Sure. I'm Megan Mulholland. I graduated in 2015 from Stamps, and I currently work as a product designer at Etsy. Previously worked at IBM and Kickstarter for a little bit as well, but my role at Etsy, I work on the design systems team. So we design components. So the whole website and apps all look cohesive. And then on the side, I'm still an illustrator. So I still take on side projects and things for fun. So try to balance my time between those 2 things.
Oh, I love it. Great. Thank you so much. So Martina, we'll start with you. And how do you approach your own portfolio, and what do you look for in other people's portfolios?
Well, for my own portfolio, I have I have basically 2 sites because I started out just doing design, and my portfolio was geared mainly towards design and some illustration. So for a long time, I just had one site that showed per project kind of branding and a lot of different skill sets, but all based in design. But now I have still a main website, one website, Squarespace, built, but it features 3 different categories that really kind of break out my different skill sets, or practices, I guess, which are graphic design, illustration, and painting, because art is a much larger portion of my career at this point. And so I do have a link out to my old design site because that site fits perfectly for what clientels are looking for in that area. And then I have my illustration and art kind of on my main site now as like their own built out strategy for that specific skill set. So you can do it a lot of different ways. It's kind of one of the main things I want to share today is that there's like an infinite number of ways to do a portfolio. It's just kind of who you're gearing yourself towards and what specifically you have to offer. So I have a presentation. Should I go into it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to share. Okay, so can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I just want to preface this presentation by saying that I find it really hard to make generalizations and tips about portfolios because of what I just said. Each of you is so different, and who your audience is and the employers that you're trying to attract are so different, and what they're looking for is different. But that said, there are a few things that I feel are worth mentioning from my own experience as a designer looking for jobs, and also as someone hiring designers on my team in-house at companies, and also as an illustrator and artist working in the industry. So that's why it's worth taking what I say with a grain of salt, because if someone says something different, that's entirely valid as well to their experience. So to begin, portfolios are ever changing, never perfect, and go through many, many stages. I mean, my portfolio when I graduated looks entirely different from it does now, obviously, not just in the content, but in the design. I've had so many different goals or things that my portfolio is trying to do or is geared towards different people. So it's always important to build it towards that goal or for whatever skill set you're trying to present at that time. And it's better to have one or many portfolios rather than nothing at all. And I say that because I know a lot of people that have kind of over obsessed with trying to build this perfect portfolio. And it took them forever to launch it, to get it out there, or they had it always under construction. And I just think it's really, really important to have something out there, have yourself out there, than nothing at all. Obviously, that's like your main way to communicate with jobs. And then when I say many portfolios, I also mean that you could have a website, but you could also have a link to your website on many different job hunting sites as well, like Behance and things like that. And so there's a lot of different accounts with your work on it. And so it's nice to have kind of a touch base for everyone in completely different areas. And so, make sure to have something out there. And then also social is a really great thing to have as well. It's not considered a website, but it is a way to put your portfolio out there. And I think it's a really great way to communicate with people too. Show us your best projects and then be super clear about the skills that the project required. I say this because depending on what you do or what you're applying for, you'll most likely have non-designers look at your work too. As someone who's a freelancer, almost all my clients are non-designers, someone who needs a designer or a consultant to be on their team to help them with that aspect of their project. And so I think it's really important that your portfolio can speak to everyone, not just someone who's very in tune with design or art or the very specific skill set that you do, So the point of the portfolio is to display your skill sets. And it's really important to reiterate what those skills are in the project. Maybe hit some keywords that your employers might be looking for. And then the descriptions are, really important for non-designers as well. So the number of projects is not as important as how you show them. And I don't mean to say that like less is more, as in like as few projects as possible. I just mean that to say, even if you choose to have a lot of projects, they have to be your best ones. Make sure they're your best ones. And that how you show them is in their best light possible. So if you don't have a lot of great images of a certain project, maybe don't show it yet. Maybe wait until you have a really great way to present it and to talk about it so that people are understanding it the way that it should be understood. And then I would really recommend spending as much time on your portfolio as you would on any paying project, if not more, or any of your school projects. It's just really important that it's presented in a way that makes sense as a whole, rather than kind of hodgepodging images that you exported for a project and that was specifically at that time. Like even in my own portfolio, I will bring in all the exports, all the images that I created for a project, bring them into Illustrator and create its own composition specifically for the website, or you can do it in code on back end too, but just having it laid out in a way that makes it clear and interesting is super important. So there's no one required template, as we said earlier, for a portfolio, and yours will look different from the next person's, and that's okay. I think it's good to strive for better, but don't assume yours is wrong because someone else did something different from you. This is your portfolio. Your work is completely different from someone else's. Maybe your work is really bold and full of color, or very simple and monochrome. Don't feel like you have to adhere to someone else's portfolio format because they're successful. Like, do what works for your work and let yourself show through in your own portfolio. So let your portfolio be yours. And when in doubt, and you like, if you don't know how to do any of that or haven't decided how you want to present all that and the layout and everything, just when in doubt, take good photos or be sure to export clear, visually interesting images of your work and write a description. What you say, what you did, why it exists, and or what's interesting about it, and obviously when you did it, what your role was and who it was for. But use that description to your benefit. You know, the words can say a lot that can't be shown just in the visuals of the image. Like, how did you work on a team? What was the most exciting part about it? Why was the project interesting to you? What did you get to do for it that you weren't able to do in other areas? That gives them a little bit more of an idea of who you are as a person. And that's it. Thanks so much, you guys.
Martina, thank you so much. You hit upon a couple things that I definitely want to sort of reiterate, which is the idea of multiple portfolios, that you don't have to think of your web portfolio in particular as it has to be everything. You could have different portfolios for different types of opportunities. So that was really good to hear. I also love what you were talking about toward the end of using text to contextualize what someone is seeing, because especially as you were pointing out, you know, you're sending this to HR people who are not designers.
Exactly.
Or clients, if you're a freelancer, who are not designers or artists. So including that context can be really helpful, and I loved you know, hearing you talk about that. I know Megan, which we're going to come to next, UI UX design by definition has a lot more text involved usually. So I'm hoping you're going to tell us a bit about use of text, if like what is too much, what is too little.
Yes,
From,
absolutely.
yeah, from your perspective. So Martina, again, thank you so much for that. And Megan, let's move on to you.
Cool. Okay, let me see. I'll try to share my screen. All right. Is everybody seeing a presentation with, you guys seeing a presentation with my face on it? Yes. Okay, yeah. Cool. Okay, great. Hi, my name's Megan again, product designer at Etsy. This is my face, but this is also my face. I've always had like a little self-portrait on each of my portfolio websites, just kind of as like a fun thing for me. So I figured that'd be a fun way to start out. Like I said, currently at Etsy, definitely was kind of like a bumpy road to get there through lots of other different companies. But yeah, I'm happy to kind of share kind of all the things that I've learned along the way in terms of kind of what makes for a good product design portfolio, even if you have lots of other interests as well. So the example I'm going to be using is my personal website, which is kind of a bit of a like, do as I say, not as I do. Like, I'm not perfect, and like definitely a portfolio for some reason is that project that you never quite finished. It's something that you're always updating and you're always kind of making revisions to. So yeah, some of this advice I try to remember myself. So yeah, just coming from that place. So for me personally, in terms of the product design work that I show, I tend to show kind of a breadth of things. So I've done things that are more on the visual design side of things. So working on websites, a little bit of branding, stuff that looks a little bit more like traditional UX work, and then kind of like deep user experience work like user research and stuff like that. So that's a pretty broad spectrum. And so I think what's really helped me is like having a specific story about myself. So the way that I kind of communicate how I fit within product design as a practice is like me personally, I like to do 50% visual design work and 50% UX work. And I try to make sure that the projects I'm showing show that as well. Just because different companies, sometimes they're looking for like only a visual designer, only a UX designer. And I want to really clearly say, I do both, and this is really important to me. So if you can really like nail down like your story about like kind of who you are as a maker and kind of be able to tell that succinctly, kind of elevator pitch style, I think that that'll get you really far. Additionally, similar to what a previous presenter had said, having labels, clear labels for the work that you do is really helpful and important. I know as like STAMP students, you have like 6 different interests and like 10 billion different things that you're really excited about. And I think that's what makes us like special in terms of kind of like art and design grads. So don't shy away from like showing like the different facets of yourself. But the best advice I ever got was only show work that you want to get hired for in the future. So if you have this one project that like you love, but like you're like, I never want to do sculpture ever again, like don't show that because someone will hire you for it. And yeah, so I think just having clear labels also helps like recruiters and other folks zero in on the work that they're trying to get context for in terms of hiring you. So if they're looking at you as a graphic designer, they just want to see your graphic design work, and then maybe they'll take a look at the other stuff. And this again is coming from more of a product design portfolio lens, but hopefully this is applicable to other things as well. These are kind of the essentials that I try to have. So the way my portfolio is set up, I have like a summary page, and then there's a link that makes reading the full case study optional. So with this summary page, I try to get like just the top level stuff that I want people to walk away with. Like the role that I had on the team. So a lot of times if you're looking at a portfolio and someone says like, hey, I did this, it's like, great. But like, if I don't know what your role was on that team, I can't really see what your contribution was. It's also helpful to kind of fill out who the other members of your team were, any deliverables, the physical things that you made is helpful to know. But the most important thing is the problem summary, which I've labeled as like the challenge. And again, a lot of portfolios will say like, I fixed this thing and I did this really amazing thing. And like, that's great, but it's hard to evaluate how good of a job you did if we don't know where you started from. And like as a product designer, it's helpful to say like our user was having this problem, so we did this. And that's where solution and impact comes in. So you also want to be able to say like I did this, this, and this, and it tracks back to that problem statement. So you can really show impact. And so kind of the cheat sheet for me was like, again, like portfolios are these huge daunting projects that can take forever. And what I found was if I did this little minified version with a couple of really nice images, that was a great diet version of the portfolio that I was able to get out. And then I was able to do the case study. So I really recommend that. Also hope this doesn't make y'all motion sick, but ensure that your case studies, if you have them, or any longer pieces are scannable. Make sure the sections are really clear. Make sure you have good typography, just because the people who are looking at your portfolios are going to be looking at a million different other ones. And they want to be able to zoom in on the things that they're looking for and get like a clear idea of the narrative really quickly. Some people, bless them, will read the whole thing, and that's great, but most people don't. And finally, one thing I got caught up on, I think early on in the process of making a portfolio was like, what is my personal brand? Who am I? Oh my God. And I think like it was a lot easier for me to say like, I'm going to show my personality a little bit. And so this is from the top portion of my website. And like, it feels very like fun to me. Like I said, I've always had like a goofy self-portrait on each iteration of my portfolio site. And like, people have always said that's memorable and fun. And so I feel like this bit is somewhere where you can take a little bit of the pressure off. Like, yeah, so just think of it as showing your personality. And just as like a little add-on, so say like, you know, you've showed your portfolio, it's really impressed somebody, and you know, what do you do in terms of like next steps with like interviews and stuff? This is just all things that I learned along the way and like I found really helpful if you're going into a more traditional career path like product design. Don't shy away from large companies. I almost did an interview at IBM, which was my first big job. I was there for 4 years. It's an older company. It's been around for 100 years, but it ended up being like a really formative part of my career. They had an amazing boot camp that I was a part of, and also a huge network. So lots of folks have moved on to other places, and I can still reach out and say like, hey, how are you doing? Or what are you up to? And that kind of thing. So it's just they're a great place to get your footing after school, and they can give you the experience you need to land that next role. And then informational interviews are your friend. So even if your dream company or your dream place doesn't have a role right now, it's worth learning about like what would make me an ideal candidate in the future. So like reach out to recruiters, reach out to people who work there, alums like us. Most people will take the time to give you a few minutes and chat with you, and just kind of creating these relationships is super valuable. And that's really made a difference in my own career. Crowdsource and save the hardest questions that you get. When I interviewed at IBM, my dad grilled me with a series of interview questions that made me cry, and I kept them, and I still go through them like prior to interviews, just because it makes me feel really prepared. I've since basically shared those with friends, and we kind of crowdsource the toughest interview questions that we get, so we can just all feel a little bit more prepared. And then finally, to hammer it home again, make sure everything's scannable that like applies to your resume and your website and your LinkedIn, wherever you're presenting yourself. Make sure people like know who you are as fast as possible. Just intentionally call attention to things that you don't want them to forget. And then finally, just like as one last thing, just keep making space for your artistic practice. Even if you go into something a little bit more traditional like tech or product design, you can still make space for the things that you like to do at work. So as an illustrator, I've gotten to do some work at IBM. We had an internal magazine that we sent out globally to other studios. That was super fun, not work related. It was great. I've gotten to do some work for like the Etsy socials as I've worked there, which has been super fun. And then, yeah, make sure you keep on making time for that outside of work as well. Collaborate with friends just for the fun of it. Participate in local shows, meet your local community wherever you end up moving after school. And yeah, keep on taking on side projects that excite you and are really fun. So, yep, this is my site again, if you'd like to look at it. Again, do as I say, not as I do. We're all out here trying our best. But yeah, thanks so much for your time, and hopefully that was helpful.
Megan, thank you so much. I love the fact that Megan started at IBM, and I think the initial contact was in fact Portfolio Expo.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and so she's like this living, breathing example of it's like, yes, you can do this. Um, and I want to just also highlight some of the advice you were giving, like crowdsourcing difficult questions. I think that students tend to underestimate the network of their peers. It's like, oh no, I have to talk to a professional, when in fact, just talking to the person sitting next to you in class or the person on the bus or whatever, don't undervalue your peers as really great resources for you. Not just to share things like interview questions, but also that support that we all need when we're having a bad day or we're looking for inspiration or whatever. Don't underestimate that. It's so powerful. So again, Megan, thank you. And Brett,
Sure.
we'll jump over to you. So just as a refresher for everybody, this is all about what you do with your own portfolio and what do you look for in other people's portfolios.
Great. I think I'm probably going to end up reiterating a lot of the things that Martina and Megan have said already. My work, because I'm making physical objects, while I was in school, it seemed like the biggest issue was not only making stuff, but photographing it in a way that displayed how it was strong or how it was doing what you wanted it to do. So that to me was a huge challenge in the beginning, because if you've made wonderful work and it just doesn't show up well, or if it doesn't highlight your skill set, then it's almost like it just doesn't exist at all. So I like to think about my portfolio. I mean, Megan said something wonderful about, keeping interview questions around. I like to think about a portfolio as a sort of archive of things that you've done in the past. And what goes along with that archive is a series of probably text that follows the things that you've made. So I think it's important about being organized about not only what you've made, but the things that you've written that accompany it. I often find myself, if I'm applying for jobs, cutting apart the things that I've written before, reassembling them in a way that is specific to the audience that whatever I've made is meant for. So that ends up being a real resource, so you don't have to sort of like recreate things. And I often find myself, looking back at statements or cover letters or things that I've produced, 6, 8, 10 years ago. I've sort of been doing this for a while, and there's often things that are embarrassing in there, but there's also, it's often a treasure trove as well of language, and I think that can really be a resource for you. So Martina said something wonderful about your portfolio as evolving. And I think that's really important, that you don't have a conception of it as something which is sort of achievable. It is something which is constantly in flux, and it is a resource for you to pull from for any specific project. My specific website is probably very different from Megan's. She used the word personality. I find that my work is often is most effective if my hands are less visible. So the website that I've produced ends up feeling very traditional, and a little bit sterile, but that's by design, in that the clients that I interact with don't want the artist to get in the way of depicting the historical figure. So again, that sort of reiterates a theme that the two previous presenters have talked about, which is that there isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution for a portfolio. It really will change based upon your audience. And I think, trying to understand your audience is an important part of growing as an artist and as a professional. As that gets honed, your portfolio is going to be honed as well. One of the things that I did initially, starting out, I talked a little bit about getting good images of my work. One of the things that I found was a good exercise is to use the peers, like John is talking about, but also people who you respect in the field, and make literal comparisons between the quality of the things that you've produced. Like literally pull up images of things that you've made, put it on the screen, and put an image of something that somebody else whose career trajectory, or a peer that you respect what they're doing, put those two things next to one another on the screen. This is how people are going to experience your work. If there's a contrast between those things, make sure that contrast isn't unpleasant, meaning that it doesn't reflect a lack of quality or a lack of understanding. Another practice that I have is to run the things that I've made in my portfolio by people who are untrained, unschooled in art. and ask them if it is digestible. Often the people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, the projects that I'm competing for, they know very little about the sort of specialized language that I was using day to day in art school. So it's important that I, try to anchor myself in the realm of language, and the realm of information, that isn't sort of in this sealed world of an art community. And that, again, that's specific to my world. I'm often dealing with cities and sometimes universities, foundations, and things like that. It's somewhat rare that I'm going to encounter people who are schooled in looking at things, or makers themselves. So it's important that I'm creating a version of myself which is easily digestible. I think the last thing that I would say about a portfolio, is that it's sort of an example of, or a reiteration of the other thing Megan said, which is, it's important that it is displaying the best version of yourself. Previous iterations of my portfolio that was out in the world was very scatterbrained. As I've sort of honed in on my audience, and I'm probably what you would call a mid-career artist now, I found that a lot of the debris that used to be displayed has sort of just fallen away. I only have one website, but I make a lot of work that isn't client-based, but it is important to me that isn't cluttering the work, the presence that I have out in the world, because my portfolio as it exists on my website is meant very specifically to get me a one kind of work, and like Megan said, I don't want it to accidentally get me work that I'm really not interested in making anymore. That's it.
Brett, thank you so much. So one of the things I'm going to point out to the students who are here today, in case you didn't quite get this, I'm going to do a quick screen share, is that on the Career Canvas site for today's session, Portfolio Prep and Presentation, you can see, if you click on Martina's name, it will take you to her website. If you click on Brett's name, it'll take you to his website. And with Megan, if you click on her name, it will actually take you to her LinkedIn site. So, again, Megan talked about the importance of your own sort of personal stamp on whatever you're creating. And Megan, I'm going to pick on you just really quickly because I personally love what you do in the personalization, and exactly what she showed us before in terms of her website continues on to what she's creating for LinkedIn and other platforms that she's using. So in case you didn't know that this exists, guys, all of that is right there on the Career Canvas site so that you can actually see more clearly. And Brett, I don't consider your site sterile, quite honestly. For those of you who have not looked at Brett's site, the landing page is this amazing black and white image of a bronze sculpture and just the word enter. And I am a big fan of a landing page that is very powerful visually. And I know right now one of the trends is to have multiple images on your landing page, and that's okay. I've talked to employers who love being able to see at a glance, like breadth of work on a landing page. I also talk to employers who is like, no, as long as it's intriguing, I don't care what's there. So there's no rights or wrongs to pretty much any of this, and hopefully you're hearing that thread through all of the things that our panelists have been saying today. It's about you and your audience. That is really what everything comes down to. So the next thing we're going to do before we jump into some Q&A, and one question was already answered by Martina in the chat, so thank you, Martina, is, as we kind of wrap this up, you know, in your own preparation, when you're either starting a site or curating a site, what would you say is probably the first thing that comes to mind for you? And Megan, let's start with you. If you're revamping at this point or curating, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
So kind of like if I want to start making like an addition to my website, kind of.
It could be an addition. It could be like, wow, this is really old. I want to replace it.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh my goodness. I mean, I think for me, I think when I'm like doing like a big push on like my portfolio, I try to make like a structure that I know will work for a couple years. So like for my current website, I spent a lot of time of like, okay, what do I want the homepage to look at? And again, I'm thinking about this more as like a product designer,
Yeah,
but it's like,
absolutely.
what do I want the experience to be for like the homepage? And then kind of how do I want to like chunk and segment my work? So then even if I say like change, like my design aesthetic changes next year or something like that, and I want to do different fonts or different whatever, it's like the bones are still the same. So I kind of know that like component wise, I'll have like the homepage and then like a project page looks like this, and then the case study looks like that. And just in terms of just kind of structure. So you can always like kind of change the top layer at any time. And I guess for me, like that makes it feel a little bit more flexible and less set in stone. I will say too, like I know I struggled for a while to figure out like what kind of website platform I wanted to use, because I feel like there's so many options, and I feel like if you're less technical, just do something that is like a Squarespace or something where you plug it in and it makes your work look amazing. Go for it. And if you can code your whole website, that's amazing, and you're going to be hired for that, also very cool. I'm neither of those things, and like I as a product designer can't use kind of out of the box stuff because people will kind of judge that. So I use Webflow, which I found to be like an in-between of that, where you can still kind of really hyper customize all of the different components, but it's not fully code. So yeah,
Very
hopefully that
cool.
helps.
I love that. Thank you. And Brett, because you've had such an interesting trajectory in which you were thinking about yourself, as a professor versus an artist versus an employer. If you're making changes, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
It's all about audience for me. I mean, my most recent redesign of my website, you talked about that landing page. It's the reason that I like that image is it in some ways displays the scale of what's been made, but also detailed. The majority of the clients that I deal with understand value in one term, and that's primarily labor. So and that term hasn't necessarily historically been relevant to the value of art objects, how long it took to make. But the people that I interact with most and the clients that I have that sort of connection made. So it's important that in displaying the things that I've made, there's simultaneously a view of scale, how big they are, but also an attention to the surface quality, attention to detail. So again, the most recent, and I think this has been consistent throughout my career path, as I redesign how what I've made is shown to the public, it has a view to a specific audience. And as I understand that audience better, the display changes accordingly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And then Martina, when you're making changes or updates, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Oh, you need to unmute. My bad.
No problem. If I was to build a brand new site, I think the first place I go to is exactly the same thing that the others said, but it's like, what's the goal for the site? Usually if I'm making a shift, making a change, it's because the old site isn't doing something that I needed to do and I want to do something new. And so if you look at the very last change I made, which was to build a brand new landing page and kind of site to redirect to all these different skills, it was to bring in art as a larger part of my practice. And so to kind of really break out all those different features. So it is first, what's my goal, which is to bring in this new skill set. And then secondly, how do I organize and structure the site so that everything is clear, and that whoever's looking for what get what they want. So if someone's looking for design, they know exactly where to go. And in that area, design is highlighted in a specific way by project. Illustration, it's a lot more visual, and the style of the illustrations are curated so that they're more consistent with each other. Even though I can do a lot of different styles within illustration, those types of people are looking more for a specific style that they know they're going to get at the end. And you can do a lot of variety within that style. And then with art, it's obviously showcasing either each series or just the work in detail, or maybe there's a lot more writing about what the concepts are about in my abstract work. So yeah, it's always defining what your goal is, whether it's like a new audience or showcasing something about yourself new that wasn't there before, and then really organizing and designing your site so that whoever comes to it gets what they want more easily. So scannability, I think, is also huge. When Megan said that, that's very accurate.
Yeah, and because the word scan can mean so many different things, but in this case, scannable means as a designer, you are making it clear what the person is seeing without them having to read everything or see everything. Like literally, you can scan the page and see what's intended for you to see. So I just want to make sure
Yeah,
we
your
have the
skill
right.
sets are digestible, like easily
Exactly.
digestible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. You guys are awesome. I love that you have such different backgrounds, and yet your advice is really very similar. Because it's about audience, it's about who you are, it's about purpose and goals. I love that word, Martina. What is my goal for this? So thank you, thank you, thank you. We're going to open this up to any questions that students may have. You can either use your raise hand feature, or you can drop a question into the chat, whatever you're most comfortable with. So whatever questions you have, go for it. And Nicole, hi, you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you for your talk. It was super informative. I have a question specifically for Megan. So looking through your website, I loved how much personality is shown on there from the get-go with the landing page and all the colors and bubbly illustrations. So I'm also working on redesigning my portfolio, and I am trying to incorporate more in-house works that I've done at different companies. And I think a goal of mine is also to incorporate personality and authenticity as well. And I think one thing I am kind of working through is making sure that I can show that I am working closely under the brand guidelines. And yeah, that's one aspect I want to show, but because there are strict brand guidelines, it might be a little limiting. And so I'm wondering how you were able to show who you are as a designer and the tone that you like working with and your personality, while also working under the restrictions of the brand guidelines as well.
For sure. Okay, so kind of how do you balance showing your own kind of personal style and personality with working with very strict brand guidelines? Yeah. So honestly, I think with a portfolio site, there's like some pieces of it that are like very much like yours. And then there's other pieces of it that are like, you know, maybe more brand focused. So I would say that like the homepage and like if you have an about page or something like that, anything that's like, you know, very malleable that you're creating. I think that's where you can let your personality shine. I think in other projects that aren't tied to a brand, you can also kind of add your personal touches. But within the project itself, like maybe say very distinctly at the top, like just be like, this is a project for like X company. What I've also liked seeing in other folks' work is sometimes they'll have like a little section that says like, these are the restrictions that I was working within. So like say this company uses these brand colors, they'll have little swatches of them, or they'll have like a list of like, these are the fonts we were told to use or something like that. So then it's giving context for like your constraints and also that way too, that it gives the viewer an idea of like, okay, so like this is what the brand was asking of them and I can see that they followed those rules. So does that help?
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
I love that. Thank you. We actually have a question in the chat, and I love this question because where exactly should we look for illustrative work, or where should we put our portfolio out there to pick up illustrative work? So this question is getting at, you know, okay, I've worked on my portfolio, I feel good about it, but illustration work for the most part is freelance. You know, so you know it's like, okay, this is here, but like how do I attract attention? And obviously, you know, there are sites like Dribble and Coraflot and Behance and stuff like that, but and I think Martina and Megan, maybe you might have some ideas about, you know, what's out there for like freelance illustration type work where you can post your link to your portfolio and gain some attention and traction.
I can start. That's okay.
Yeah.
So Working Not Working is a really great site actually for designers and illustrators alike, and a bunch of other creative. I think my boyfriend's a photographer. He also has Not Working. It's a great site and it has a lot of capability to show projects, especially visual projects, and illustration is pretty heavy on there. So I would definitely go on there. Closer and Closer is a illustration, not agency, rep. They're a rep company, and they have amazing illustrators on there. And I think that's just a great place to go to reference other illustrator websites. They show each illustrator on that site, but you can, if you go into each person's like page, you can go to their website and see what they have and how they built their illustration website. And then I think also Instagram is an amazing place for illustration because it's just keenly visual. I mean, it's just solely visual. So, and I've gotten a lot of illustration projects just through Instagram, but I try and like put it out there a certain way, tag it a bunch, and then yeah, people will start to look that way. But also because you're an illustrator, you can create, I mean, even like an Etsy site and sell product. And as people are looking for something else, they'll obviously see that you're a great illustrator. There's a lot of ways to market illustration that isn't just mainly through a website.
Great, thank you. Megan, any recommendations that you have?
Yeah. Yeah, I had forgotten about Working Not Working. I haven't looked at them in a minute. So that, thank you for reminding me of that. Plus one to that. I mainly use Instagram just because like, again, it is such like a portable way to show what you can do. I mean, when we were kind of a little bit more in person, I feel like the number of times I was like, hey, like this is my work, and like or instead kind of switching with someone else to say like, oh, like, let me see like what you do as well. So it kind of has that ability to bring your work into the world with you in a very like portable way, which I really like. I would also say too, like, if and when you like, this might be slightly tangential, but I found that in terms of getting like illustration jobs and stuff like that, sometimes I might get an opportunity that's like not quite the right fit for me. So I'll pass it on to a friend and I'll connect them with whoever's looking for that work. And that always kind of comes back around for you. So like if you're getting an ask for something that maybe like, a friend would be better at, I think eventually in the future, that kind of opportunity will come back to you.
Yeah.
If
Really
I can
great
just
insight.
follow up on that, I think that's just such an elegant comment right there. It's just so wonderful, and it just the value of maintaining a community of peers, being connected in that way when you leave school is just so crucial. Because I've done the same thing before, passed off opportunities to other artists that I know, and you're absolutely right that sort of comes back. So just being connected to a group of people that can both inspire you and potentially shift things your way or share opportunities with you, that's just crucial. So it's also something that I think you need to be intentional about, in leaving school. It's easy to lose track of people and to lose track of a community of people that can challenge you. It's crucial.
Great. So we have a follow-up, but I'm going to jump over to Rachel next. And before, hi Rachel, do we have you? Yep, we do. Okay. Before Rachel asks her question, believe it or not, Working Not Working is coming virtually this semester to one of our Lunch and Learn sessions. So thank you both for mentioning Working Not Working. And obviously, students, I will include that in my weekly email so you know when that will happen. And Rachel, hi. Question that you have.
Hello. Okay, I'm gonna try to explain this succinctly. Basically, I want to be a UX designer and I can do graphic design, but I don't like graphic design. But also, graphic design is kind of applicable to UX design. So, like, if you have a skill that like makes you hireable, but you don't want to do that exclusively, do you like, should that be included in a portfolio as well?
I can jump in real fast. So I would say that like coming from that industry specifically, I think people are always going to still want to see a little bit of visual design work. But that can be focused more on like, say, your level of polish on your UX design work. You don't necessarily have to show like a poster show you were in or whatever, if that's like not the work that you want to do. I would focus on just like getting your visual craft into your UX projects so that they see that this is a part of my practice, but I really am focused on UX work. So I don't think you have to show this kind of stuff that you have to do. And just want to reiterate too that like there are companies as well that like separate UX and visual design pretty distinctly. And I would suggest seeking those kinds of places out and asking that question of recruiters of like, how do you split your designers? So.
Yeah. Any other reactions to when you have a skill to do something, but it's not really what you want to do?
I think at the beginning of your career like this, since graphic design is so close to UX in a lot of companies and teams, it might be good just to use it to get the experience on a UX project. So kind of like what Megan said, but just kind of in the beginning, maybe take on those projects to make sure that you're near and get the experience with UX. But then as you start to hone in and figure out or know that you can get more projects that you want, to kind of like make that a priority in the beginning and set that up in your portfolio that way and talk to people about it that way.
Great.
I also think that it's important not to have an understanding of your career that is like you're just going to sort of like land in the perfect spot in the beginning. I imagine myself as an entirely different artist coming out with my bachelor's degree, even when I got done with my master's work, I imagined a trajectory entirely differently than the one that I've landed in. So I don't think that it's necessarily a problem if you are taking on some work that might not be your favorite work. There's I do that now. And there's like, and I think about it all the time. Anytime I'm like grumbling to my family or my friends, it's like, oh, but think of all the things that I could be doing, and I'm, there's like so many worse ways to spend your time. So just don't be too picky, especially in the beginning, because you'll find that as you change and develop as a person, the futures that you imagine for yourself will change as well. And in doing work that you might not enjoy perfectly, you're going to learn things that'll be applicable to any other trajectory that you might take as well.
Yeah, great advice. I think I'm living proof of that. So we have just 2 more minutes, and there is a really great follow-up question here around using sites like Instagram. And it's really, I think, important around how do you increase your visibility? How do you increase traffic? And I think it was Martina who said, or Megan, do a lot of tagging. But what other ways do you see increasing visibility on a site like Instagram?
Well, I was just gonna say that it might take time. Sometimes just the level of work needs to increase, or the quality needs to increase. And so I would just say keep at it, keep doing your best work, and start posting your best work, or keep posting your best work, because I think the better it gets and the better you get, inevitably the more people will come and like. I think tagging helps get like a new audience to see it, and maybe interacting with an illustration community, or even any other type of like interacting a lot with places that you'd like to do illustration work for, or to create projects that are geared towards other people that didn't ask you to do a project, but you just felt like doing on your own, and tagging them and showing people, or doing it for an initiative that you feel strongly about, I think is what will bring the account a lot of personality and activity, and people looking at it. But I think, yeah, don't maybe look at it as like, how do I just gain more attention? Just keep doing the things that are important to you and that you like to do, and keep getting better at stuff, because that's why people like things.
Oh, wow. Very nice. Thank you, Martina. We're literally at 1 o'clock, but I want to give Brett and Megan, in case you have any feedback on that.
Yeah, I can be really brief. Just kind of plus one, I think doing like collaborations with like people or friends, or causes that you really like, that's a good way to kind of get more exposure. I will also say too that like the algorithm is like rewards like posting a bunch all the time, and that can feel really overwhelming. So like don't forget that like your art lives outside of Instagram too, and like put it other places, show it to other people, do it for yourself, but like don't do it for an algorithm that's going to like reward you for posting a million times in a month.
Very good.
There's nothing I can add to those two thoughts. They're perfect.
Thank you all, our panelists, these wonderful alums. It's such a pleasure to have you on my screen. And thank you, students, for coming, and hopefully this was helpful information for you. I'll remind you that I am like Conduit Boy. If you ever want to be in touch with any alums that I am connected to, always feel free to reach out and I'll help you make that connection. And have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.